Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Tinyiko. The sooner we come out of this virtual, the better, Comrade Tinyiko, so that we have the feeling of it. Thank you very much, comrades. I think the first thing, before I can do some short opening, let's observe just a moment of silence to remember all the victims of COVID-19 pandemic and wish those who have tested positive their speedy recovery, even those who are lying in the different hospitals or lying in their homes. Can we observe a moment of silence, comrades? Amandla.
Awethu.
Comrade Mhlekwa, can you close your dogs in there so that they cannot disturb us?
Okay. It's not me, Chair. I don't have dogs.
No. Thank you, comrade.
That could be Comrade Cheney. It could be Comrade Cheney, I suspect.
I also have dogs here. Okay. Thank you very much, comrades. As we begin with our program, I just want to emphasize there are two categories of our participants here. They are panelists, they are also attendees. And we want the attendees to indicate to them that they have not been closed outside this particular participation or this platform. They will hear everything which we are talking here, but unfortunately, they won't be on the screen. What is on the screen is only panelists. So they must just understand why we have this. That's how it has been set up, this particular platform. So the comrades will forgive us, but they will hear everything. And they can be able even to raise their hands and so on. And also, I must emphasize, comrades, there must be no disruptions. When there's a speaker on the platform, all of us must mute. All of us must mute and just listen, because you can end up with cross lines, and muting when the other speaker is on the floor helps a lot in terms of improving the quality of the voice. And thank you very much, comrades. Comrade Mapaila, have you managed to come in? Because we have to start with you in terms of just outlining our program and the acknowledgement of the leadership and the various guests who are with us. Have you managed to come in, Comrade Mapaila? Yes, Chief. Thank you very much, General Secretary. You struggled until you were in. We are still waiting for Comrade Mapaila. Is also struggling, but they say they are trying by all means.
Yeah, I guess so.
Baie dankie, meneer.
Ja, kan jy praat goeie Afrikaans?
I guess Africans spreken.
Ja.
Comrade Mike, how are you?
I think I'm okay, Chairperson. I think I'm all right. And yourself?
Oh,
I'm
Mongameli.
fine.
You think?
Yes, no bad. Yes, no bad. Yes, no bad. Ngiyazama.
The last
Sure.
time I saw you, you were fighting, man, threatening to collapse the state completely.
No, that was another version of me. The one that was not okay. This one is okay.
Okay, fine.
This one is fine.
Fine, Mongameli.
Yeah.
You okay?
Mm.
And
Hi, Comrade GS. Are you good?
kiteng me ukai.
Hi, Relika. Ke jwalo ka go
Ka me.
ke nana ekare ke-
Hanyane ke bua Sesotho ya tseba.
That's deliberate. You can do better.
Nobhala olusha lwamabovu.
No pala.
Unjani?
Hayi no ifukile ngwena.
Hayi ke. Ifukile ndati.
Hey President.
I suppose that's me, unless there's another president. Now you know, but
Hey, good.
long time.
Yeah, hey.
Have
COVID.
you
This
recovered?
COVID. I know I'm fine.
Okay. Let's soldier on.
Yeah.
Let's soldier
Are you-
on.
Are you well on your side? You are fully recovered.
No, I'm getting there. Ngithola ngendlela.
Yeah, because this
Thank
thing
you,
of
Lord.
age.
Yeah. Okay.
You must be like Comrade December Mavuso that will show all the signs of COVID, but you will never test positive.
He's very scared. That,
Mhlep,
he doesn't want any
No,
COVID
but-
to issue.
did you see that Kaiser Chiefs for anyone's giving evidence at the Zondo Commission?
No, but I respect leadership. I think I will be on the side of COSATU on Wednesday.
He was saying that, chap, they say, on the last day of the log at 4:30, who was number one in the log? I can't remember, sir. Che, I can't remember. Did you not write in your own profile that Kaiser Chiefs is number one? What appendix is that, Chair? Is it in the documentation?
Exigency, comrades. Exigency, comrades.
And
Just
then they say, but today we are wearing your Kaiser Chiefs shirt. No, sir, I wasn't even aware. My wife just took this out, and I wasn't even aware. I'm discovering now that I'm wearing a Kaiser Chiefs.
GS, can I appeal to exigency to you, comrade GS? We have an emergency. Could we request the chair to reallocate Comrade Soli's tasks because Comrade Soli is not joining in order for us to start? Is the chairperson alert to the fact? Can we get Comrade Chulas, Comrade in the chair, to reallocate Comrade Soli's task so that we can be able to start? Unfortunately, he's able to join, despite all what he tried to do.
I will allocate. I will allocate. General Secretary, we have just, when you were also struggling, started with the national, with the international song, and we are now supposed to be getting just an outline and the welcome of or acknowledgement of the guests who are here. We will allocate this task either to Comrade Alex or Comrade Jenny, just for a few minutes. I know it's an impromptu speech. Can we request?
Comrade Chris is here.
Oh, Chris is there. It's not in the program. Oh, Comrade Chris, can you just deal with this matter? I know that you are not prepared. It's an impromptu thing. Can we allow you, Nopala, to do that?
What are you asking me to do, Chair?
I'm requesting Comrade Chris Mahlaku to do that item which was supposed to be done by Comrade Sodi Mapaila. Why is Comrade Chris not on the screen?
He is on the screen. He's here. We
Comrade
can
Chris,
also...
mute.
Slalo,
Yes. We are tasking you. We are tasking you, yes, to do what Comrade Mapaila was going to do, just to outline the program and also acknowledge who is here.
Oh, no, thank you very much, Deputy Chair, for the South African Communist Party's 2020-2021 Red October campaign launch, which is happening today. We will later on have the keynote address by the General Secretary of the party, Comrade Dr. Platon Zimande, who will outline the key elements of the program and the challenges, but also the programmatic things that we should be looking at in this period. This will be preceded by a brief address from the National Secretary of the Young Communist League of South Africa, Comrade Tinuko Ntini, and also messages of support from COSATU and African National Congress, who are represented here respectively by the Deputy President of COSATU, Comrade Mike Chigange, and member of the NEC of the ANC, Comrade Alvin Bouters, the Deputy Minister of International Relations. And that constitutes, Deputy Chair, the program for today. Without much ado, let me hand over to you so that you can take the program forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chris, our second Deputy General Secretary. Before we go into the program, just to recap a little bit, comrades, this event is very important. Most of us know that in 1917, the October Revolution was one of the most explosive events in Russia, which was led by the Bolsheviks leader, that was Lenin. And the Bolsheviks, they overthrew the Russian provincial government. It's normally referred to as the bloodless coup d'etat. And I think this is a lesson from us, comrades, a very important lesson and warning. This was caused by the weaknesses of government in the economic and social problems, leading to growing unrests, unrest. And I think it's a very, very important lesson that we must learn when we're seeing a number of social and economic problems which are engulfing our country now. And you would remember that we've had this in the different years. In 2019, focusing our October Red campaign, we're focusing in building the community activists. We're trying to forge the Patriotic Front and the Popular Left Front. with emphasis, of course, on all levels of government. And we said every communist must be a community activist. We're very clear on that. You'd remember in 2018, we focused on the municipalities improving the lives of the poor, highlighting corruption and the lack of capacity at municipality level. You remember in 2017, our focus was to mobilize against the crime, including corruption and state capture. We talked about violence in general and in particular gender-based violence. This year, 2020, our campaign focuses on the hunger eradication, on healthcare, on human settlements, and water and sanitation. So it's every year, comrades, we celebrate this launch and we celebrate this big event by making it relevant, launch campaigns focusing on the different themes or areas of our struggles. So we'll hear from the General Secretary when he briefs us later on in the program. We will now go to the various messages of support. You are all welcome, comrades, and let's hope that we will cooperate. Now we will go to the solidarity messages, starting with Comrade, the National Secretary of the Young Communist League, Comrade Dinyiko. Comrade Dinyiko.
No, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Greetings to the General Sec of the party, all office bearers present, the Deputy President of COSATU, Comrade Alvin, the National Committee of the YCL. Indeed, Chair, we are highly excited today as we launch this Red October campaign and to applaud the party to relaunch one of the historic and important campaign that the party has ever waged, which is the Triple H campaign plus water campaign. This Red October, it's at the center of hope for our people, in particular the working class. And I think one thing that we need to appreciate is the role that the party played since the launching of this campaign in the early 1992, as led by our former General Sec, Comrade Krizani. And one key thing that we remind ourselves today as we launch this campaign is the words from one of the longest serving Central Committee member, Comrade Jeremy Cronin, in 1992 when this campaign was launched in Vosloorus. He said these keywords, Comrade Chair, that this is not a charity. We are not giving out this bread as a favor. We are definitely not asking you to say thank you. You have ended through a lifetime of hard labor. We are making a simple point. The right not to starve is a basic human right. It is a right that the capitalist system has never recognized, close quotes. And today again, indeed, we remind ourselves that participating in this revolution is not a favor or by playing the vanguard role. The party itself owes it to the working class, and it will continue playing this particular role and serving the working class with distinction. As we launch this campaign, indeed, as we have said, this is a very historic campaign, and we find ourselves indeed launching it in a very interesting week where indeed we are finally pleased as the YCL that the fight against corruption started to yield some results, and indeed it's no longer just a lip service. We've seen many activities over the week and these past days happening. Indeed, we are witnessing a practical action. But again, one thing that concerns us, it's a tendency that has emerged, especially within our ranks, when members of the movement are facing such serious allegations, and where these allegations obviously taps into resources that would have played a role in delivering services to our people, we will see members that will be picketing outside the courts in support of the disgraced membership, especially under the guise of a concept that sounds very progressive, but yet to be abused, the radical economic transformation. And I think it's important that we stress this point, that this concept must be understood, that it's about empowering the economically oppressed and the marginalized. It's not about defending corruption. And we hope that we'll be able to allow the law enforcement to execute its task correctly. Our municipalities, Comrade Chair, have been at the center of water crisis that we face in our country. The level of greed and corruption by both the tenderpreneurs and corrupt municipal officials has not assisted us, and instead, even where there's never been a crisis of water supplies, we've seen such. Because at some stage, what happens is that people will deliberately collapse the infrastructure of the municipality in order to consider tendering for water tanks, and you find that both the tenderpreneurs and municipal officials are part and parcel of this particular program, where they supply water tankers and make sure that even where we have never faced any crisis of water supply, suddenly you get to be shocked. And I think this is some of the issues that we have to confront as we launch this important campaign. The YCL indeed has joined the party many years ago in calling for the abolition of the tender system, because we believe that the tenders are at the center of corruption in our country and poses a huge danger to the possibility of eradicating even youth unemployment. And today, indeed, we need to make a clear call to government and the alliance in particular to rather build and ensure that internal state capacity is built for proper service delivery and employment opportunities. It is totally incorrect to have municipalities and government departments that does not have any capacity to procure even a mere pen or a mark. This is totally against the idea of building a capable and competent developmental state to address the socio-economic inequalities along the economic prosperity. And it's very much important for us as the party, as we launch this important campaign, indeed to make sure that we leave no stone unturned, especially towards the local government elections, where even last year, we can confirm that a lot of the challenges that we're faced with when we're campaigning were issues of service delivery, were issues that affects the local government sphere. And it's very much important that as we advance this Triple H campaign plus water, but we reflect on these challenges that are faced by our people. And again, it is very much important that the need for the national health insurance can never be overemphasized again. And COVID-19 has exposed the inequalities which in real sense are injustices of our health system, on the working class and the poor, and it has exposed even the existence of the two-tier system within the health system, which we have to confront. The movement should agitate the society to put pressure on all processes aimed at producing a national health insurance that will ensure that health is treated as a public good and not an agenda to generate profit and simultaneously creating two health systems in one country. It is evident, Comrade Chair, that young people are the victims of the latter crisis, and indeed at the receiving end of this injustice. The latest quarterly labor survey of the second quarter of this year, released by Stats SA, reflects this reality that the onslaught is on the young people. Almost 1.1 million of those who lost their jobs, which is almost half the 2.2 million figure, which reflect the job losses. Half of the people who lost their jobs are young people. And obviously with seeing even within the private sector, the filing of Section 189, it will continue to affect young people in majority because are the ones that are flocking into the corporate world. And the continuation of the last thing is the first out principle continues to put young people under serious danger because mostly within the industrial sector are the young people that becomes the last to be in. And indeed, it's high time that our government, even at the NATLAC process, can consider to change the LIFO principle to the first in, first out principle, where obviously young people will be saved from this job blood path that we have seen. We can no longer compromise. There is not an urgent need for a radical national youth policy in this country. As it's under review, we believe that it should be able to assist even in the implementation of a compulsory national youth service that will assist in addressing some of these challenges that are facing young people. In conclusion, Chair, the published National Stress Index reflects a crisis that the YSL earlier warned about. And we would like to commend the General Secretary of our party at his capacity as the Minister for championing this campaign. The National Stress Index has shown that the stress level in the country have doubled to almost 40% since this COVID-19 crisis and the COVID-19 situation. We're calling on the Department, therefore, of Higher Education, Science and Innovation to ensure that at least the issue of the mental health awareness in institutions of higher learning, it's given attention that it deserves. Mental health is a very important part of this campaign. And indeed, as we celebrate and as we launch this campaign, let us make sure that we deal with this issue. But the last issue, as we continue to make sure that we launch this campaign, is very much important to link it with an intensified fight against gender-based violence and femicide, where indeed we have seen shameless killing and murdering and abuse of women and children, and we need to condemn that, and we need to make sure that we intertwine this particular campaign with our Red October campaign as we continue to advance. With these few words, Comrade Chair, we'd like to wish our party a successful launch of the Red October campaign and historic relaunch of the Triple H campaign plus water. Amandla.
Away to Comrade Tinyeko, Amandla. Pambili, Mustafa Simba, Pambili.
Aluta.
Thank you very much, Comrade Tinyeko. We will move to our second message, solidarity message, which will be from COSATU by the First Deputy President, Comrade Mike Shingang. Comrade Mike, over to you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Tulas, our Deputy Chairperson. Let me, on behalf of COSATU, greet the General Secretary and all the national officials of the party. We want to say we are very delighted as a federation to join our party in South Africa to celebrate the triumph of the October Revolution. And again, in the context of our South Africa situation, we want to congratulate the party for choosing what we will call the basic pillars of freedom and democracy. Because it is our view that for any democracy to mean anything, the population of any nation must be able to access freely quality healthcare services. It should not be that when people are sick, the companies and pharmaceutical companies and those who are in the private sector must see those people who are sick as a market from which they must make money. It is important that the healthcare of any nation must be an obligation and a basic human right, and actually an indicator of when democracy and freedom is actually functioning well. It is equally important that for any freedom and democracy to mean anything, or for any revolution to be celebrated by its beneficiaries, the issue of the shelter, the housing, the issue of the water and sanitation is very important. In this context, we think that the party could not have chosen a better time to launch this kind of Triple H plus water campaign. As we join the party in this campaign, as we've done before, we have our own campaign that is actually equally reinforcing the campaign of the party, because it is our view that one of the things that is counter-revolutionary, one of the things that is going to set us backward as a nation, as a revolutionaries, is the issue of corruption. One of the reasons why today we have not yet realized the issue of national health insurance many decades after it was adopted by government, by the ruling party, and all by the alliance. It is because not only is a contestation ideological about this matter, but also a lot of red tape that is brought about by the corruption that is embedded in our system of government today. And it's not until we defeat this scourge that we shall be able to realize our aspiration of having housing that's accessible and affordable to all our people. You know that because of corruption, people are building shacks and calling them houses. People are doing very shady work at the lots of money. Millions and millions of rands that are supposed to build quality houses are lost in the process. We become a very shameful kind of government now that our people are even subjected to more inhumane situation in the name of providing shelters, but at the same time, squandering the public resources. It is in this context that COSATU will be filling the street from next week and making sure that the little resources that our country is having must be protected, must be defended. We're going to also be calling a protection of the whistleblowers and those who dare to stand up and defend and protect our public resources, including our public institutions. Our comrades are being killed all over the place for speaking out against corruption, for blowing the whistle. They are being victimized, they are being fired from work. We think that is high time that society must stand up and defend those. The very fiber of the success of our democracy will depend on men and women that are prepared to defend the state and its resources. We are saying, Comrade Chair, that the very little that our liberation movement will have been done is at the danger of being reversed if we can't open our eyes and defend it. We're going to be defending the job losses that it's a scourge at this moment. We're going to be defending the retrenchments that are meted out by private companies, are meted out by private employers, but also the attack on the collective bargaining that is coming from all sorts of places, including the state, our government. We have witnessed something very strange that has never been witnessed before, that is an employer can actually disregard and attack a very principle of democratization of the workplace, a very same principle of giving workers the right to engage, a very same principle that was part of the fiber of the workers' right. And the unfortunate part is that the state is leading by example. Vulnerable workers in the mining sector, in the farming sector, in the retail sector are going to be slaughtered because there's not going to be any government minister that's going to try and enforce a policy as far as labor laws are concerned while the state have led by example that it is okay, that you can actually not only renege, but want a court to determine whether a collective agreement is constitutional, lawful, and therefore binding. It's a very strange thing that we have never experienced in our democracy. And that's why, as workers across the sectors, we're going to be spending this month alongside the South African Communist Party, highlighting the need for health, highlighting the need of water, highlighting the need of housing, but at the same time, highlighting the need to defend the workers' right, the collective bargaining, because that is a fiber of democracy. The moment you throw out collective bargaining, you are throwing out democracy. Yeah, when you walk out of the door of collective bargaining, you're actually walking out into the door of anarchy, because there will be no rules, there will be no law, there will be no rule of engagement. So we are actually unleashing our country to anarchy. This is how we end up having Marikana, because one party moved out of a collective agreement and they thought that they can fight for something that is not provided for in the collective agreement. And that's how we had workers have died in Marikana. We dare not have our government leading society into that direction. And we're saying, as a vanguard of the revolution, not just a vanguard of the working class, we must vanguard this revolution. It is under attack, it is under siege. For society to feel free, to feel safe, to feel that democracy is actually winning, our women and children must feel safe. We are going out there as COSATU to highlight the scales of gender-based violence and femicide. We are saying everything else must be done in this country by all of us. The law enforcement agencies, all right-thinking men and women must protect our vulnerable members of society, being the women and children. We can no longer have these endless courts that are taking place that does not bring a deterrent to the perpetrators of the gender-based violence. That's why we're calling, even as we join the South African Communist Party, very proudly so, on a very correctly chosen theme for 2020-2021. We're saying along those, it will be the demands campaign that is launched by the workers in this country. We wish you a very successful campaign. We are looking forward to hearing the directives and the line of march from our General Secretary, and we shall follow for the rest of the coming month. Thank you very much, Comrade Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Comrade Mike. Forward to one industry, one union. And Comrade Mike, le memorandum, yeah, one tata le memorandum next week. Okay, Comrade Mike. Yeah. Thank you very much, Comrade Mike. We will now move to Comrade Elvin Botes, who's part of the International Relations Committee of the African National Congress, an NEC member who was also deployed as a Deputy Minister of International Relations. Comrade Alvin?
Diabolela, Slano.
Comrade Elvin, you've been cut. Do you want to switch off your video?
It can't switch off the video because we are live. People have to see here about you.
Comrade Elvin, do you hear me? Do you hear me, Comrade Elvin? I want to Comrade Tinigo, this webinar of yours. It's good because you can have as many meetings as you can, but you keep on having this problem. Comrade Botes? Can you hear me, Comrade Botes?
Comrade Alex.
We seem to have a problem. Can we request Comrade Alex or Comrade Tembiso to Comrade
Oh, Comrade Chair, he lost his connectivity.
Yeah.
He lost his connectivity. I don't know whether he lost electricity or what, but he is back now.
I'm back.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. Let me just acknowledge, Slalo, the leadership of the Alliance as led by Comrade Dr. Bonginkosi Blade Nenzamande. Let me first say, Chairperson, as an entry point, that the African... Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Chief.
Yes, that the African National Congress, Slalo, are giving our unqualified support for the launch of the Vanguard of the Working Class Red October program on Triple H plus water. I think we must be the first to make a public confession, Slalo, that the SACP, throughout its almost century-old history, has been a consistent and reliable ally of the working class and the poor. The ANC, Slalo, wish to confirm that we remain entrapped in a society still embedded by the three primary contradictions of society, which is race, class, and gender. And these contradictions, comrades, continues to evaporate our pro-poor agenda on unemployment, which namhlanje stands at just over 23%. The question of poverty, which stands at 49%, and a near perfect variable of inequality, which stands at 0.67, Chair. What that means, comrades, is that we continue to have the poor, the working class to cohabitate and coexist with the wealthy, the privileged, and the rich, normally separated by high security fences, such as what we see, for example, in Senton and Alex. It is our submission, comrades, that the genesis of the political mantra or creed of all cadres of the Revolutionary Alliance should find a expression through the words of Chair Ernesto Guevara, which said, comrades, and I quote, "If you tremble with indignation every time that an injustice is perpetuated, then you are a comrade of mine. If you tremble with indignation every time that a injustice is perpetuated against the poor by patrimonial cartels, then you are a comrade of mine. Every time, comrades, that injustice is perpetuated against the poor through the self-centered accumulation of narrow economic and private accumulation, then you are a comrade of mine. Every time that an injustice is perpetuated against the poor by the plundering of public resources by the elite, then you are a comrade of mine. We are saying, Chairperson, that we find inspiration on this very noble political program which the South African Communist Party during its 99th anniversary basically are launching. And I think it is our submission that the limitation of access to housing and water should be paramount in the program's execution. As the ANC, comrades, we are the first to acknowledge that we have not been remarkably successful to integrate our communities in regards to spatial reconstruction and development. What we still continue to have is the poor that gets alienated to the economic centers where the main production of the economy are basically taking place. So the fact that the SACP namhlanje speaks about its obsession with integrated human settlements, it is something that the African National Congress wish to welcome and basically encourage. I think, Chairperson, it is our submission that default lines as it relates to unemployment, poverty, and inequality can only be undermined by a generation of leadership who remains fixated on resolving the class dilemmas in South Africa. We are evidently also conscious, comrades, that the Revolutionary Alliance is the very able and correct custodians of the people's grievance. I think all comrades appreciate that we have reached what we call a political Rubicon, a point of no return, where the ANC was regarded as the chief respondents as it relates to challenges of the state, particularly those that reflect on patrimonial interests. And I think we are confident that the National Executive Committee of the ANC has the foresight that corruption, comrades, and its concomitant conduct presents the most single immediate danger to the South Africa's illustrious past as it relates to our democratic dispensation is concerned. Slalo, I would fail if I don't remind comrades on the launch of the Red October campaign of the party about the words of the Congolese revolutionary comrade Patrice Lumumba when he said, and I quote, "Unity and solidarity can no longer be dreams. It must be expressed in concrete actions and decisions." And therefore, comrades, during this program of the South African Communist Party, we are encouraging the Revolutionary Alliance to be more united as it relates to the economically oppressed people of our movement, that we must work as the ANC and the SACP hand in hand, comrades, to disband and abandon all those regressive tendencies within the African National Congress, in particular factionalism, which is our submission, Chairperson, is the key breeding ground that allows for a organization like the African National Congress to be disunited. We must continue to work hand in hand, comrades, on this occasion with the South African Communist Party, to root out questionable conduct and parasitic behavior, which negates from the ANC being seen as a lodestar by our communities. Chairperson, it is our submission that more must be done, that a revolution in all its facets must be seen as a conspiracy of the oppressed against the ruling class. We must be able to be more concerned, comrades, that the Revolutionary Alliance should be very central and at close proximity to being seen as the instrument through which the voiceless in our communities are being given a voice, that it being seen as the instrument through which the jobless in our communities are seen as their voice. The Revolutionary Alliance, comrades, on an everyday basis should be more and more seen and appreciated by our people as the central pillar, comrades, as it relates to the question of its grievance, as it relates to land dispossession is concerned. And as we are deepening, comrades, our pro-poor agenda against minority privileges and Black alienation, it is the submission of the African National Congress, comrades, as we celebrate the 103rd birthday of a reluctant hero and dedicated revolutionary in the form of O.R. Tambo during Red October month. That must be mindful that we're not fighting necessarily against a minority of a people, but we are fighting in reality against an economic system of alienation. As we conclude, Chairperson, I think the African National Congress is conscious that the post-COVID-19 economic recovery agenda should not necessarily, comrades, take us back to pre-COVID-19 economic structure. It is our submission that we must reimagine an economy in which a very strong people's orientation find expression within, in particular, comrades, the cooperative sector within our communities. It is also a public observation that we have made, comrades, that the system of tendering and the outsourcing of capacity within the state have negated from a people's oriented and a pro-poor agenda. And those are the issues, comrades, when learning us what needs to be done, we have examined and continue to examine as the African National Congress. And we really hope that during this very important Triple H plus water program of Red October of the South African Communist Party, we will be able to deepen our agenda, comrades, in pursuit of the National Democratic Society. On behalf of the African National Congress and leadership, Comrade Chairperson, the 13th ANC President, Comrade Cyril Ramaphosa, I wish the South African Communist Party and its leadership and an immediate success on this program. Amandla.
Wait.
Thank you, Amandla, Comrade Elvin. Thank you very much. It's very good when we hear our main ally, with the leader of the alliance, always with us on the issues, uncomfortable as they might be to some of us. These are the very important issues we have to deal with. And there's a leader of the ANC in the name of Ntadekwede Mantashe, who always says, the first step to deal with a problem is to acknowledge that there is a problem. Because if you don't acknowledge that, you're not going to be able to deal with that problem. You will always be on denial. And I think it's good for the movement to start understanding now that there are certain weaknesses in our revolution. If we don't deal with those weaknesses, the masses can turn against us. Thank you very much, Comrade Elvin. Now I'm going to be giving or introducing the main address of the day. We're now reaching the climax of the input today, where I'm going to introduce a person who has held a number of positions in the Communist Party. He has been the deputy chair, he has been the deputy secretary, he has been an NEC member of the African National Congress, and also an NEC, an NWC member of the African National Congress. He has been into the education struggles, that's where he is known. were associated with organizations like the National Education Union of South Africa. You are also associated with the Union of the Democratic University Staff Association, UDUSA, and also associated with the NCC, who has been one of our intellectuals in drafting position papers in the NCC. A person whom we deployed to also help with the early policies which we're developing in preparation to govern in education. And Comrade Mike, you must note that Comrade Emmanuel Bonginkosi Blade Nzimande from Guadamboza. He is an industrial sociologist. So he has been a teacher lecturer and an author of a number of progressive education organizations. But what is very interesting to me, he also worked in one of the companies. It's no more HR, it was not HR at that time. It was called the personnel, and there's a difference between the personnel and HR. So that's why he started also interacting with the workers. But this is a man who had joined the party in the 80s and is now leading us as the General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, still an NEC of the African National Congress, and has been for a number of years. Babunzimand, over to you to give us the main message of the day, to give the line of what we have to focus on as the communists, and also us making sure that we pull all the communities in our campaign. Ungasitshela-ke ngale personnel yakho usebenzela yona, zange usebenzele i-HR. Thank you very much. Let's allow the General Secretary to take the platform.
Kwakuthiwa ondaba zabantu sihlala.
Undaba zabantu.
Maybe the best way to start this address, which I'm doing on behalf of the SACP, is to say, my mother was a kitchen girl. Oh, my father was a garden boy. Oh, that's why.
I'm a communist. I'm a communist. I'm a communist.
Umama wami wayesebenza ekitchen. Ubaba wami wayesebenza engadini. Yingakho ngilikomanisi. Andla.
Wait.
Let me start by greeting you, Comrade National Chair, Deputy National Chair, Comrade Thulas Nxesi, and let me also greet our national office bearers, our National Treasurer, Comrade Joyce Mloyi Murupa, our First Deputy General Secretary, Comrade Soli Mapaila, our Second Deputy General Secretary, Comrade Chris Matlaku, and all other members of the Central Committee who have joined us in on this important occasion. Let me also greet Comrade Alvin Botes, who is here representing the African National Congress as a member of its National Executive Committee, and thank him very much for his message he delivered today. Let me also greet Comrade Mike Shingange, the First Deputy President of COSATU, and also thank you, Comrade Mike, for your message. And Comrade Tinyiko Dini, the Secretary, National Secretary of our YCL, Ufasimba, And also thanks for a wonderful message. And let me greet comrades, all of you who have joined us here, as well as those who have joined us through our live streaming. Hunger eradication, health, human settlements, and water. We are launching our SACP 2020 Red October campaign based on these critical interconnected challenges in our society. Their relevance today is as great, if not greater, than when in the early 1990s, our late General Secretary, Comrade Crisani, launched the Triple H campaign, which at the time meant health, housing, and hunger. That earlier campaign achieved an important impact and milestone upon the content of what then became the ANC's 1994 election manifesto. The RDP, or the Reconstruction and Development Program, a policy document whose general line of march remains absolutely valid even today. The RDP programmatic statement that is still sadly remains unfulfilled in many ways, as has been flat-lit in the COVID-19 pandemic. Let us also use today by foregrounding, by honoring the often unsung heroes of the frontline workers in the struggle against COVID-19. Now, more than before, many people are beginning to appreciate the importance of jobs that we used to look down at, like cleaners. And as we have said before, who would have thought that a security officer, a worker at the gate of a hospital, can take the temperature of a medical doctor, and if the temperature is too high, tell the doctor that you are not going to come into this gate, go and get health attention as a matter of urgency. That's the working class that as the SACP we've been fighting for and saying without that working class, there would be no society. Without those frontline workers, we can never defeat the invisible enemy of COVID-19. Sithi kunina abasebenzi nomgogodla wempilo yethu nomnotho wethu nezwe lakithi. Today, as we take up our Triple H plus water campaign, we do so in the midst of the gravest global capitalist crisis since the 1930s. It is a crisis triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic, but it occurs against the background of and further exacerbates the pre-existing multidimensional economic, social, and environmental crises, both within South Africa and globally. This campaign, of course, takes us to our centenary, the 100 years of the SACP next year. Here in South Africa, the past weeks have brought the dismal but not unexpected news of a second quarter 16% GDP collapse and the further loss of 2.2 million jobs, bringing our actual unemployment rate into an entirely unsustainable 50% plus range. Youth unemployment is likely now to be around 70%. This is simply unsustainable. On this trajectory, our country does indeed face social collapse. And yet there is also hope. There are real possibilities and the absolute necessity for a struggle for a different world to break the chains of neoliberal austerity to forge a different sustainable relationship with the environment. All around the world, there is a renewed popular upsurge and a growing realization of the imperative to build what we might call a post-capitalist global order. What does that mean? It means we must put people before profits. It means we must put environmental sustainability before corporate greed. It means we must make the financial speculators and the horde of parasites redundant, not the workers. We must not retrench the workers. We must retrench the financial speculators and the parasites who are living on the blood of the working class. We must acknowledge and mainstream the huge role played by women, not least in the care economy. We must recognize and formalize what the pandemic has made crystal clear. The millions in the informal economy, street vendors, and others who are doing essential work. The SACP slogan, "Socialism is the future, build it now," is more relevant than ever. Let us use this Red October campaign to give concrete content to that slogan. Let us build working class and popular confidence and capacity. Let us foster a socialist morality of sharing and caring, not of greed and dog eat dog. Let us construct in struggle, not just in theory, the building blocks of socialism in the present. As Comrade Krisani always insisted, socialism must not be seen as some distant and abstract utopia. It is not about big words, it's about very basic things. Socialism is about nutritious food for the people. It's about dignified shelter, safe drinking and water for other uses, and accessible healthcare. Let us also build on and learn from what is already happening. That's what good communists do. In preparation for today's launch, the SACP convened a webinar on Friday involving experts and activists in their fields, but also our party structures. What we learned was that in townships, in villages, and informal settlements, party cadres are active, sometimes directly under the SACP banner, at other times as activists in the trade union movement and in community-based programs and networks. We today commit to deepen that work. Much of this work is unheralded. In Lavender Hill, for instance, in Cape Town, party and ANC comrades, together with many other community activists, are running free food kitchens, food gardens, and trauma counseling. In Limpopo, during the COVID-19 lockdown, initiatives have been taken to coordinate the food that people in a village grow to enable selling produce to each other, to lessen the dependence on the retailers charging high prices for food that otherwise can be produced locally. In Mpumalanga, an SACP branch works every weekend helping in a food garden to support elderly widows and single widowers. In Vosloorus, there are community food gardens still functioning that were started by the party branch in the late 1990s. In my own home township, Dambuza Road in Maritzburg, the youth is busy moving from section to section, cleaning our living areas. In Jubetin in the Northwest, a housing stokvel set out to build their own homes and organize to get assistance from the provincial government. Some of these many programs, comrades, have been a direct response to the deepening crises sparked by the COVID-19 pandemic. Others have been scaled up on the basis of pre-existing community programs and networks. These are just but a few examples of thousands of grassroots initiatives that are being undertaken across our country. We need to share these experiences. We need to learn from each other. We need to massively expand this work. We have red brigades who have valiantly taken up so many party campaigns. Let these red brigades now become COVID-19 compliance brigades. Let them become food security brigades. We must also, comrades, as part of harnessing this energy, build district development forums. Government has taken an important decision to build more effective all-of-government cooperation through the district development model. This also becomes an ideal site to build greater popular participatory involvement in order to achieve the objectives of our H plus water campaign. We are calling on all SACP provinces and district structures to play an active role in establishing popular district development forums. We are saying today a good SACP provincial secretary must be involved in building district development forums. A good SACP district secretary must build popular district development forums. A good SACP branch secretary must be involved in building popular district development forums. So should our alliance leaders on the ground must be part of this. We are saying today, we must build working class and popular unity in action. Our approach to campaigning must never, comrades, be limited to a service delivery protest mode. While such protests are important in highlighting real issues confronting working class communities, we need to position the working class and broader popular forces not just as complainants or plaintiffs, not just as under-service clients of a delivery state, but as the makers and drivers of change. A democratic state and organized and mobilized working class and popular forces need to be the co-producers of radical transformation. And by radical transformation, we don't mean theft of public resources. We mean concrete changes of the conditions of ordinary people on the ground for the better. Building unity in action means forging much greater unity with the organized working class. As the SACP today, we welcome the fact that SAFTU, the Trade Union Federation, has committed its full support to the COSATU general strike of October 7th. It is a strike against corruption and austerity. It is a strike against government's illegal reneging on its own commitments in the public sector central bargaining forum. The SACP extends its full support to this day of action and to the demands advanced by the two largest and socialist federations in our country. We're doing this not opportunistically or in a populist fashion. It's because as South African communists, we are nothing else other than the sons and daughters of South Africa's workers. Unity in action also requires struggles that unite the formally employed and organized with the unemployed and those in the informal sector. Unity in action also requires that we broaden our struggles to include the widest array of popular forces, not least the millions of middle strata, by the way, who face massive problems of indebtedness, home repossessions, unaffordable health care, and much more. Siyamakomanisi sithi sikhathazekile ukuthi iningi labantu bakithi livele ngeenwele licilwe ikweletini nalabo bekungathi baphila impilo engconywana ama-professionals akithi nabo bavele ngeenwele bacwile ey'kweletini. We are saying today we must engender hunger eradication, healthcare, human settlements, and water. We must integrate the Joe Slovo Foundation SACP COSATU White Ribbon campaign against gender-based violence into our approach to the Red October campaign. Asilwe neyishimane ehlukumeza abantu besifazane ezingasakwazi ukukhuluma nabantu besifazane ngendlela enokuhlonipha kodwa abazi ukuthi umuntu wesifazane into yokuhlukunyezwa nalabo baseyikhundleni abazi ukuthi ukuze umuntu wesifazane athole umsebenzi kufanele aqale ucansini kuqala. Samagqomanisi namhlanje sithi njengoba singena kulo Red October sizolwa neyishimane phansi neyishimane phansi. Gender inequality results in hunger, illness, inaccess to water and housing, and this burden is disproportionately carried by women. Knowing that you have a safe place to stay makes it easy to leave the abuser so as to live another day. Women's ownership of houses provides shelter for an entire family. That's why as South African communists, we are saying to our women, don't keep on hoping that my boyfriend or my husband is abusing me today, but tomorrow he may be better. No. That is why also as South African communists, we are saying, we must not humiliate women who leave their marriages because they are being abused. Sibabize nangamagama angasile sithi omabuye emendweni. Akho mabuye emendweni. Mina nje uma ngingakhuluma njengobaba ozala izingane zamantombazana. Izingane zami zamantombazana uma zihluleka emendweni azibuyele ekhaya ziyohlala zinekhona njalo ngoba kungcono uyilanda ingane yakhe isaphila kunokuba uyilanda siyisidumbu ngebhokisi. Access to a meal without any strife helps to save a life. Women's ownership of houses provides shelter for an entire family. Skilling and employing women and ensuring guaranteed minimum income for every woman helps the fight against hunger and makes women less dependent on abusers for food. When access to compassionate health practitioners is easily gained, evidence of rape and abuse will be better obtained. Women should have access to 24-hour health care and feminine hygiene products. On tap, potable water in safe and secure locations minimizes the vulnerability of women, and abuse will be better fought against. Women should have access to all the services that they need so that they are less vulnerable to assault and assist them to preserve their dignity. Access to water for hygiene boosts self-esteem and confidence to actively participate in activities. Our Triple H campaign plus water must go hand in hand with a mass public employment program. There is now widespread support, and we welcome this as the SACP, that at NETLEC, the partners now are calling for a mass public employment program, which has to be a key response to the crisis. Part of this mass public employment program must also mean that we employ more and more cleaners, who today we now know they are so important in our fight against COVID-19. As the SACP, we believe that much of this program should be based on the Community Works Program model. It is a ward-based model, public sector facilitated, but actively run by local non-profit organizations and community-based organizations in which the projects are democratically selected by the community participants. These may range from community food gardens, community safety networks, cultural activities and sports coaching, township infrastructure and maintenance, and cleanup work, environmental work, school feeding, assisting early childhood centers, and women's safety havens, community health outreach, and much more. Hayi maqabane ngeke, zingcolile indawo esihlala kuzona. Zingcole ziyasabisa, ungathi kuhlala magundane, akuhlala abantu abaphilayo. Sithi ngalo mkhankaso wethu ake sisukume, silekelele laba bathi indawo zethu mazihlanzeke zibe clean. Akwazi ukuthi amadolobha ethu ayebukeka emahle ngesikhathi sobandlululo, kodwa ukuthi uma sekuphethe thina kuvele kube umhume nje amahoko okungathi akuhlala abantu abaphilayo. The SACP is also calling for an immediate introduction of a universal basic income grant. The levels of social distress with the new job loss bloodbath on top of existing crises means that apart from thousands of localized initiatives and programs, we have to respond with urgency and across the board. The special COVID-19 social relief distress grant of 350 Rand per month has offered a survival lifeline to millions, but that grant is now due to expire at the end of this month. As the SACP, we are saying we cannot allow this to happen. The SACP calls for a basic income grant that is universal. In other words, that is not means tested to avoid costly administrative overheads. Phambili basic income grant phambili. Hunger and malnutrition in our country are a scandal in a country that produces enough food to feed all its people. Nearly 50% of South Africans are food insecure, yet our extensive but labor-shedding capital-intensive commercial agricultural sector, heavily reliant on pesticides, fertilizers, and other anti-environmental practices, produces more than enough food to feed South Africa. Ngamanye amazwi izwe lethu likhiqiza ukudla okwanele ukuthi kungadla wonke umuntu ingabibikho indlala, kodwa uhafu wabantu bakithi bayalamba. Hunger relates not just to having enough food, but also critically having a nutritionally balanced diet. Apart from hunger, South Africa has a major diabetes crisis, which particularly impacts on working class communities and as a reflection of poor nutrition. The COVID-19 pandemic and the hard lockdown further exposed just how vulnerable millions of South Africans are to food insecurity. However, there were also very impressive campaigns to deal with this, as we had outlined before. The hard lockdown also exposed how important informal street traders are, not just for their own household sustainability, but for providing affordable food for the working class. Thina ebesibabukela phansi odadewethu nabafowethu abadayisa ukudla emgaqweni, sibone kahle uma sekuthiwa sivalelwe endlini ukuthi la magwinya abawadayisa emgaqweni abaluleke kangakanani empilweni zethu. Yet these traders encounter a great deal of administrative harassment, particularly from local municipalities. We are saying as the SACP today to all our municipalities, stop harassing informal traders. Their rights to trade must be recognized and formalized. Asiyiceli lento. Siyayisho. Uma ngabe nohulumeni basekhaya bakhethwe yithi, nizokwenza lento efunwa abantu bakithi. Singenzi into esingayazi ukuthi ifunwa ubani. The rights of rural women living in the former homelands must secure tenured access to productive land, and this must be entrenched. Lento yokuthi umhlaba kufanele unikwe amadoda kuphela, kufanele iphele lonto. Isikhathi esiningi omama bakwazi ukusebenzisa lo mhlaba ukukhiqiza ukudla nezinye izinto eziyimpilo ezidingakalayo. The increased indebtedness of the working class and the lower middle classes in wake of the COVID-19 pandemic exacerbates the food insecurity and deepens the crisis of social reproduction of many a household. In other words, many of our households are struggling to make ends meet. This indebtedness must be addressed in our economic recovery and development strategy and in building an inclusive economy. Consideration should be given to another debt amnesty and or other debt relief measures for workers and the lower middle classes who are often at the mercy of private financial capital. Asifuni ukubona abantu bakithi bedlelwa izindlu ngenxa yekweletu. Asifuni ukubona abantu bakithi abanye bedlelwa iy'moto ney'mpahla zabo ngenxa yekweletu. Sithi akube nenhlelo yokuthi kube nendlela yokuthi abantu bakithi baphunyuzwe kuleli joka lekweletu. Kodwa uma sisho njalo phela sisho ukuthi abantu bakithi abahambe nje bayofuna iy'kweletu noma kanjani. Sikusho lokhu ngoba siyazi isikhathi esiningi bakweleta ngoba bazama ukuziphilisa. We now need the very rapid advance to a national health insurance. The COVID-19 pandemic has emphasized with the greatest urgency the absolute necessity on how advancing very rapidly with the implementation of a comprehensive national health insurance system based on the principle of solidarity. As the SACP today, we are saying, to advance rapidly towards the NHI, we need to do the following. Thina sifana nalabantu abafane bathi akwenzeka izinto kodwa bangakwazi ukusho ukuthi sizokwenzeka kanjani. We are not populists. We don't call for things to happen when we do not know and when we do not have ideas how they should happen, which is what we are outlining now on how the NHI should happen. We say down with budget cuts and the creeping defunding of the public healthcare system. The public health system needs more human and financial resources. We can't be cutting health budget in the midst of a pandemic. We say implement the long-standing resolution to develop a state-owned capacity to produce desperately needed pharmaceutical so that affordability and availability are based on social need and not market forces. We are also saying as the SACP, and I'm not saying this because I'm deployed as the Minister of Science, you can't cut down on science funding in the middle of a pandemic when we need more of science, for instance, to research and find vaccines to be able to save the lives of our people. We call for much greater transparency in the health sector in general, and we need to stamp out corruption and neglect. We call on trade unions, Comrade Mike, in their wage and other demands to make the NHI a key component of the social wage demand. In particular, trade unions in the private largest companies must also put pressure on their bosses to appreciate the value of an NHI. It's not enough to just demand NHI in the public sector. We must also demand it in the private sector, where there are millions and millions of rands that are not invested, that are not being spent, whilst workers are dying from preventable diseases. We must not only mobilize the workers and urban rural poor around the NHI, for increasingly indebted middle strata with costly medical aids that rapidly become depleted, forcing you to pay for healthcare out of pocket. The NHI will be a vital advance for you. Siyazazi lezi zinto, iningi lenu njengoba nisibuka namhlanje la, seniqalile njengoba ku-October senikhokha emakhukhwini ngoba i-medical aid iphelile imali yakhona, bathi abasezi ukukhokhela noma ngabe uguliswa yini. To the cynics who query affordability of an NHI, we say quite simply, the NHI is something that we cannot not afford. If you ever doubted this before the COVID-19 pandemic, then surely now is the time to change your views. We've always been calling for an NHI. Even those who are doubting today must realize that because of COVID-19, this issue has been underlined even more, because private medical health care is not going to assist us to deal with pandemics. And we are still going to be having more pandemics in the world because of capitalist greed that is destroying natural environment and also leading to climate change. On water and sanitation, which is another campaign in our Red October campaign, we are saying that whilst there's been progress since 1994 in providing access to safe water and sanitation, we are falling far behind our goals to provide 100% coverage by 2030. While many of our written policies are world-class, actual transformation and implementation are often weak. Water licensing is still in favor of the pre-1994 beneficiaries. South Africa is a water-scarce country, although science can help us to desalinate seawater. And therefore, there is an urgent need to rapidly change our approach to water and sanitation. That's why we say we must invest more in science. There are many sustainable technologies, some developed by an excellent cadre of South African researchers, but we have failed to develop them for the market, and the intellectual property, production and marketing have now been taken over by other countries. The other challenge we face, government funds a lot of research, but some products that are marketed and commercialized out of that research, government doesn't benefit. Just to make an example, insulin to manage diabetes was discovered at the University of Toronto in 1929. Comrade Nobala Solimapail, do you know that the doctor who discovered insulin was paid $1? Count from 1929 to 2020, and you tell me how many billions of dollars have been made by pharmaceutical companies who are selling that insulin. Therefore, publicly funded research must also see some money coming back to the state so that we can fund more research. In community struggles, we need to mobilize to protect our key infrastructure, including water infrastructure, from vandalism. As the SACP, we feel very strongly about this, that as we launch our Red October campaign, we must protect public infrastructure. We want to repeat this. If you are protesting for a road, you can't destroy a clinic. If you are protesting for NSFAS, you can't then go and destroy an HIV/AIDS clinic in a university that is supporting staff and students. When the SACP first launched its Triple H campaign under the leadership of our late General Secretary Chris Hani in the early 1990s, we tended to focus on houses. The RDP of 1994 estimated a housing backlog of 3 million. But the backlog remained 3 million. We built 3 million houses, but it remains 3 million, owing to many factors. Rapid urbanization, thanks to the abolition of apartheid control measures, but also due to a general failure to rapidly implement rural land reform. The RDP housing has been beset with a number of problems, comrades. Instead of publicly owned construction capacity or of a people's brigade approach to housing construction, new township houses has been outsourced. In other words, we give out housing as tenders. That is why some of the tenderpreneurs, they get paid 100,000 rands to build a house, but they end up building a house that is not even worth 20,000 rand. That's why as the SACP, we are saying, let's have a program to assist our people to build their own houses. To focus on houses alone and not on viable human settlements with local employment possibilities and with recreational and other communal amenities has seen the replication of the apartheid era dormitory townships pattern. Lezi zindlu ze-RDP esithi siyazakha. Sisazakha le kude namadolobha nala kunemsebenzi khona. Sisenza nje kufane indlela abantu abahlala ngayo nesimo ababehlala ngaso ngaphansi kohulumeni wobandlululo. In this Red October campaign, the SACP, together with a range of allied formations, will be taking forward our campaign against brutal evictions and home repossessions. Khona nalento embi, udlelwe indlu yakho, usukhokha 700,000 rand, kuthi usakweleta omunye 700,000 rand, bese idayisa 100 rand. Kodwa wena usale nesikweletu sika 700,000. We can no longer just allow this thing. Through this campaign, we are taking up this. It can't be that banks sell people's houses for nothing and still leave them owing hundreds of thousands of rands. People, their houses must be sold at market value. And if there is change from what was left, that money must not be taken by the banks. It must be taken by our own people. We will campaign for the active transformation of human settlements, including through calling for the cancellation of private housing contracts where there are not the required skills with all monies recuperated. Yihlazo kahle kahle lento. Lamakopi ezindlu esizakhayo ngenxa yokuthi sinikwa amathenda beba abantu bakithi bengakwazi ukuzakhela izindlu zabo. Sithi samagomanisi ayiphele lonto. Sithi kubantu bakithi sebenzani nathi. Sithi ANC sebenzani nathi. Sithi kwikhosathu sebenzani nathi. Sisho kuzo zonke izakhiwo ezihambisana nalombutho wethu nalomfela ndawonye wethu we-alliance sebenzisani nathi ukubhekana nalezi zinto. A major people-driven program based on community works programs principles for the upgrading of well-located informal settlements must be pursued. We are also saying we want expanded construction of rental stock and the effective regulation of rentals. We are saying let's address security of tenure and get title deeds for our people, and also urban land reform, including expropriation of well-located land for mixed use, mixed income development must be fast-tracked. A very important message, comrades, and to fellow South Africans, that with this Red October campaign we are sending, is that we cannot be able to address the Triple H and water without at the same time waging the struggle against gender-based violence. I have already highlighted this, but the reason why we are saying so is because we must never tire to fight this new pandemic of gender-based violence. The struggle for sustainable human settlements, for dignified and accessible healthcare, for access to safe water and sanitation, and against hunger, all connect dynamically with the struggle against patriarchal oppression and all of its morbid symptoms. Umama wakwami uMantombela angikhulumeli yena lana inkokheli zami. Ube ngitshela ekuseni namhlanje ethi uya kwi-Red October. Wokhumbula ke mina wakubathi uDG wethu ngisekwi-public service asingene ngo-6 ekuseni. Ngamtshela ngathi uma uthi angingene ngo-6 ekuseni ubani ozohambisa iy'ngane zami esikoleni ngoba iy'ngane zihanjiswa yimina. In other words, we must structure even our work arrangements such that they take into account the reality that actually faces women. Access to safe water, for instance, will liberate millions of women and young girls from the drudgery and often danger of fetching water from distant streams. We also know that poor sanitation is a cause of lots of problems. And poor sanitation, by the way, is nothing else other than indignity. We are saying in this Red October campaign, we must fight also a struggle on two fronts. This is important. We are saying no to corruption and lawlessness, but we are also saying no to austerity. The sectoral focuses of our 2020 Red October campaign, which is health, human settlements, hunger, and water, are fundamentally related to the broader strategic positioning that the SACP's September Central Committee elaborated for the present period. It is a struggle, as I say, on two fronts. It's a struggle against corruption and lawlessness, and it's a struggle against austerity. That's why we are happy now that law enforcement agencies are beginning to arrest, and we are saying to them, arrest even more. Popular struggles against the crises on the health front, in homelessness, in hunger and access to safe water and sanitation, all invariably bump into these challenges. We try to provide housing, we bump into corruption and lawlessness. On the other hand, we also bump into the crushing impact of a dogmatic, fundamentalist, self-destructive, neoliberal austerity, even old-fashioned policies being pushed by Treasury and the South African Reserve Bank, and a range of neoliberal enforcers, including the ratings agencies, the IMF, and much of the mainstream commentariat on the other. When SACP districts take up community-based campaigns for access to water, they run into a tangled web of lawless destruction of bulk infrastructure, so that corrupt water tanker tenderpreneurs with connections into municipalities can profit off people's most basic right. Amanye alamasela esikhuluma ngawo anemoto ezideliver amanzi bahamba bayophula amapayipi lapha asebenza amanzi ukuze abantu bangawatholi amanzi ukuze kuqashwe bona ukuthi abahambisa amanzi benza imali. Abanye yibo abathumela abantu ebusuku ukuyolimaza i-infrastructure ngoba bafuna ukuthi kuqashwe bona ukuze benze imali. Ngamanye amazwi ubusela buncisha abantu amathuba okukwazi ukuziphilisa ngoba befuna ukuthi lawo masela kube yiwona kuphela akwazi ukudla and adle angadeli. Treasury is now further reducing expenditure by 21 billion rands for 2021 and by 28.5 billion rands for 2021-2022, and defying, unfortunately, the Public Sector Bargaining Council agreement. Unless this self-defeating austerity is reversed, this pro-cyclical austerity, which is out of step with most countries in the world, at a time of catastrophic economic decline, will drive South Africa into a total failed state impasse, possibly as soon as 2022. Sihlaleleni siyabasebenzi, siyabantu base South Africa. Sibukela kukhona abazosishumayeza ngale austerity. Ukuthi asinciphisi yonke indawo ngendlela efanayo. Sibe sazi ukuthi lezi zinto zizosidalela inkinga engakanani. abanye babo bazokhuluma nezinto ezingasenzeki kwamanye amazwe ngisho ngqiwa sebaziyeka lezi zinto okuthiwa zizokwenziwa la eSouth Africa. Fana nokudayiselwa impahla eyisekeni zibe zikhona impahla ezintsha. While corruption is a massive drain on our society, we must actively fight the illusion, though, that neoliberal austerity is the most effective weapon against corruption. We need a massive stimulus program focused on mass job creation, reindustrialization, and a just green transition. We want to say no to corruption and lawlessness, but we also want to say no to austerity. Usually, the two things, corruption and austerity, have the same effect. They undermine our developmental agenda. Now, once more, as I move towards closing, we want to say as the SACP, all what we've been saying so far, how do we pay for it? Because we are a responsible communist party, we just don't demand. We also come up with concrete suggestions on how to fund this, because we are not populists. Like eminye imibutho engeke ngiyibize ngamagama eyazi ukuthi nje kugijinwa kuyodestroywa kuyokwenziwa izinto, but uma ubabuza ukuthi sizozenza kanjani lento, imali izovelapha bakwazi ukukutshela. SACP has got the answers, and here are they. Before the global COVID-19 pandemic, there was a growing awareness, even in relatively mainstream international quarters, that neoliberal orthodoxy was not working. Let me even quote the Financial Times, which is a global mouthpiece for finance capital. It says, and I quote, "Governments will have to accept a more active role in the economy. They must see public services as investments rather than liabilities, and look for ways to make labor markets less insecure. Redistribution will again be on the agenda. Policies until recently considered eccentric, such as basic income and wealth tax, will have to be in the mix," unquote. Where are our fundamentalist neoliberals? Their friends have left them behind. They come and want to sell us old-fashioned things here. Unfortunately, key institutions within the South African state, as we have said, unfortunately, including Treasury and the Reserve Bank, they remain recalcitrant, neoliberal true believers stuck in a provincial and destructive orthodoxy while global fashions are changing. Whose interest is this old-fashioned fundamentalist agenda 7? Whose interest is a call for SAA to be liquidated 7? It's serving those capitalists who are waiting on the wings to capture the SAA market for their own greed. We are destroying our airline when the post-lockdown situation is gonna need an aviation strategy with an airline where the state has got a say, also in order to promote tourism. But we are told, liquidate SAA. As the SACP, we are totally opposed to the liquidation of SAA. Some people are saying, yeah, but SAA, it's flying the rich people. It's not for workers. That's very short-sighted. It's workers who clean these aeroplanes. It's workers who fix these aeroplanes. It's workers who are employed in the tourism sector. This thing that one group of workers is better than another group, or we can get rid of one set of workers against the other. We want to say, as the Communist Party today, the working class struggle is indivisible. Comrade Mike Shingange, we want to repeat this. The working class struggle is indivisible. There is considerable scope, therefore, for a much more relaxed monetary and fiscal policy in South Africa. That's what we are calling for, and that's where we can get money from. While there are important and still open debates within South Africa, and in which the SACP is engaging among a variety of anti-neoliberal progressive economists, academics and research institutions, there is an important convergence amongst us based on the following. Where do we get money? Let's embark on anti-austerity measures. The question should not be, can we afford a universal income grant or a massive public employment program or a publicly led reindustrialization program? The stark reality is that we cannot not afford to implement a massive, publicly driven and funded stimulus and recovery program. The alternative is social collapse and a failed state. We also need a real and substantive stimulus recovery plan that drives radical structural transformation, not what we are told as structural reform. While the general commitments contained in the NETLEC agreement to our Deputy National Chairperson, but still to be pronounced by Cabinet, we must welcome the NETLEC's engagement on a possible recovery plan. And its implementation must be clear. The default position appears still to be over-reliant on the private sector and on the incentivizing without disciplining private capital. Let's look at this. Because some people say, yeah, communists just talk anyhow. Government guaranteed 200 billion rands for a scheme to support small business. Hardly any cent, very little was spent on this 200 billion rands. Why? Because banks do not know how to support small and medium enterprises. Because banks in South Africa do not know how to act in a developmental manner. And also they don't want low interest rate, they want high interest rates. This money should instead have been directed into development finance institutions like the DBSA and the Industrial Development Corporation, so that public interest investment rather than commercially driven priorities are advanced. We are also calling for disciplining capital. There is no developmental state that does not discipline capital. Whether it was South Korea or a certain version in the Nordic countries like Sweden and Norway, we must direct capital to prioritize certain investments. That's where we can get the money from. For instance, in South Africa, corporate taxes have dropped from 52% in 1983 to 48% in 1994 and to 28% currently. Despite this, there's also massive corporate and individual capitalist tax fraud. It was interesting the other day listening to Donald Trump justifying this. When he was asked if he's paying his taxes, he was saying, well, there are smart ways as business people we get, to get around the taxes and so on. I've never heard a president of a country so blatantly justifying this robbery of economies of much needed tax, especially to look after the poor. This mispricing in South Africa and dodging and tax fraud is costing us between 150 billion and 370 billion annually. There's been little to no appetite to enforce prescribed assets on capital, despite the fact that the cash reserves in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, 50 companies, increased from 242 billion rand to a massive 1.4 trillion rand between 2005 and 2016. In other words, there has been a massive and ongoing investment strike. Nayi imali engasetshenziswa. Iningi ngendlela eyisimanga. Mina njengomfana owadambuza nje 1.4 angazi nanokuthi imalini, kodwa ngiyazi ukuthi imali eningi. Ningi kakhulu. Singakwazi ukuyisebenzisa le mali ukuthi sibhekane ney'nkinga zethu ey'ningi. Sasivumelene njalo. nohulumeni wethu ngalesa sikhathi siqala i-Red October campaign ngo-2000 ukuthi this matter of prescribed assets must be addressed to redirect these monies to priority investment into job creating productive economic activities. Kwasho ukuthi-ke because the capitalist class inemali managed to lobby against this victory, we must resuscitate this if we are to provide health, if we are to provide human settlements, if we are to address hunger, and if we are going to be able to provide water and its infrastructure. Therefore, to resource all of the desperate social needs for health, food security, water sanitation, and all that, urgent steps need to be undertaken. Let me end by outlining these urgent steps. One, we want a major review of Treasury Reserve Bank policy perspectives, ensuring that macroeconomic policy responds to the urgent need for a massive stimulus and recovery injection. Some of our comrades, when we raise this, they say, shh, don't talk publicly about these things. You must keep quiet, you know, otherwise you're going to upset the rating agencies. Yet they do nothing about this. So we are being asked to keep quiet so that we continue reproducing the kinds of inequalities that we have in our country, and we are actually supporting the interests of finance capital. The second thing which we say must be done, we must introduce a wealth tax. In other words, the SACP today is saying, tax the rich. We want to repeat, tax the rich. We are also saying we must begin to tax capital transactions, which in economic language is known as a Tobin tax. Also, we are saying we must boldly introduce targeted prescribed assets. In short, South Africa has enough resources to be able to redirect them to address these things that we are raising. Down with corruption and vandalism. Away with austerity. Forward with the struggle for healthcare. Forward with the struggle for food security. Forward with dignified human settlements. Forward towards safe water and sanitation for all. Socialism is the future. We have collectively to build it now. And let's remind ourselves what Marx and Engels said. Philosophers have interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. Or we can say, philosophers have interpreted problems of water, health, human settlement in many ways. The point, however, is to provide clean drinking water, proper human settlements, and NHR. Amandla.
Away to.
Away to Comrade General Secretary. Thank you for that input. Indeed, you've risen to the occasion. You've been able to articulate the issues which are affecting the poor and the working class. The issue of corruption and various issues of a service level delivery is a very, very important issue. We are now moving towards closure. By the way, our Deputy General Secretary, the first one, who was struggling, he managed to get in even before the General Secretary spoke. Thank you, Comrade Soli. That item was handled very well by your second Deputy General Secretary, Comrade Chris. We will now move to the vote of thanks, which will be led by Comrade our National Treasurer, Joyce Moloyo Moropa. Comrade Treasurer, over to you.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. Maybe the first thing I would request that comrades mute, because we can feel some feedback. We're just about to close. If they can be patient, mute so that they can be silenced, we can be able to just finalize. Thank you very much to yourself, Comrade Chairperson. Would really like to thank the success of today. The General Secretary has actually put a very high morale. I again request the comrades to mute, just for other voices not to echo and actually disturb the program. We're just about to finish. Comrades, we had a very successful program for today, and one wants to appreciate it. We now are challenged to actually start to work. And it is important for me, from what the chairperson has afforded me, to thank the comrades who have done so much good work to ensure that the program of today comes up very, very well. You know, but what is going to be well is going to be on the ground. Don't forget that, comrades. Chairperson, you have actually run our program so well. Thank you for running it to the last part, and you have actually ensured that you manage everything properly. We appreciate that. Comrade Chris, when Comrade Soli was battling, you actually managed him so well. That's our second Deputy General Secretary, Comrade Chris Matlaku, who had to jump in for our first DGS, Comrade Soli Mapaila, who was at the time struggling with the connection, but we thank you, Comrade Soli. Ultimately, you were part of the team, and I know that it wouldn't be good for you. It wouldn't sit well with you that you were not part of this process, but fortunately, we actually started from the beginning with all of us to the end. Our young leader, who is very inspiring and who actually make us to want to cut our age and be part of the YCL, Comrade Diniko Mdeni, who has actually contributed so well in terms of complementing the program of today, of this launch, and we are actually very grateful. And thank you very much, Comrade Diniko. We actually heard your message, and we actually, I'm sure even the GS, who's also in higher education and training, has had the level of stress you talked about amongst the students, and through innovation, how they should manage and assist them. And we all know that, and we thank you that you have actually made that message very clear as well. And we hope that it will be noted, and we actually match and assist the students to actually focus, because we need more education for this country if the level of stress is at that level. And therefore, you have actually led that by actually anchoring it properly. Comrades, we had our reliable partners who are always with us in the alliance, COSATU, Comrade Deputy President, Comrade Mike Shingange. Thanks again. You know, we had all what you have said, including the plight of the workers, which is very urgent and serious in the country, that we have actually anchored, and which from the left axis, we definitely have to look into the matters that you have actually raised. We thank you very much for complementing this program as well, and also moving with most of the programs and the issues that we actually are focusing on our Red October. Thank you, Comrade Mike. The Deputy Minister, who is representing the African National Congress today, Comrade Alvin Waters. Yes, of course, all the messages, all the issues you raised, yes, completely, they are complementing what we are doing today. We want to really thank you for your participation. It actually meant a lot for this day. And we believe that with the African National Congress representing it here on this platform of Red October, Comrade Alvin, it will actually move on very, very well. We have to complement one another, because these issues we're raising are very critical. And remember, we are now facing the local government elections. And therefore, these issues, if are not ironed out, we have to know that it will be a negative impact for the entire alliance, and therefore we would really need the message to sync very, very well, and we can synergize the inputs that had been done and ensure that we implement that program decisively. GS, you know, you have actually elevated the Red October in a proper way. We were all watching, and we wanted to see if you're actually doing your work. We normally don't thank the fish for swimming, but we actually thank you for giving a very sharp message and actually making sure that you become active and understand this is the beginning of Red October. You have done this task so well, the way we wanted it to be done. And thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yes, we need that during this time, you know, we really need to be revitalized and, you know, start to work to the maximum of what we can be able to do. Comrade Stembiso, Comrade Alex, you have done very, very well. Comrade Jenny, who's always supporting the work that has been done, taking care of all platforms, everything is going on well. But from the media side as well, we also want to say, no, you have done so well. Thank you very much, because this is well organized, and we appreciate it from Comrade Alex Mashilo, leading media, Comrade Stembiso, assisting Comrade Alex, and we'll always thank you, Comrade Jenny. We know very well that we've established various platforms, and there are comrades in the Facebook, and we have noticed the numbers were very high. And we really appreciate all the comrades that actually participated and became part of this. They didn't want to hear somebody telling them about the message, but they wanted to hear the General Secretary delivering the message. We have so much, a large number, which we so much appreciate, and thank you very much to all the comrades who have actually participated and ensured that this Red October is going to become a success, particularly on the implementation. Along that, comrades, I would really like to thank all of you, and I would like to say Amandla and Viva. Siyabonga, Mgcinisihlalo. Back to you, Chairperson. Thank you very much. And thank you again, Chairperson, for steering this ship.
Thank you, Comrade Treasurer. And thank to all the comrades who were part of this session. I must also thank you for behaving, and there were no problems. There was no hustling and people wanting to disrupt whilst we were speaking. You handled yourselves very well. And with those words, therefore, we've come to the end of the session. Thank you very much, comrades.
Amandla.
Away
Forward to the Red October campaign, forward.
Forward. Thanks, Babala, and everybody.
Yes,
Siyabonga, man.
Thank you very much.
And everyone. Comrade Jen, I hope you have, what's the right word? You have forgiven me. You are still my dear sister, despite the challenges that you are aware I've been having. You know.
I'll always forgive you.
Forward.
Good message. Thank you very much.
I'll be forward
To Gauteng, forward.
Bye-bye.
You see now, Jacob is competing with Maritzburg. You can't compete with Maritzburg.
Forward to the Eastern Cape, forward.
Hours away from the sea. Maritzburg is 40 minutes away.
Forward.
Thank you for
Forward, Eastern Cape, forward.
So, bye.
Bye-bye, comrades.
Bye, comrades. Yeah.
Please keep on keeping safe, comrades.
Yeah, comrades.
Thank you, Jess.
Be safe.
I'm a mask in our court.
I'm muted. Comrade Soli.
Yes, Alexo.
We took it from the network companies. They have this saying, pay as you go. So we did learn as you go. We found it 100%. You know?
No, that's fine, Mama. That's fine.
I had Comrade Tulas thanking technology, you know.
Yeah. I see even Comrade Peggy Charlie had a similar problem I had, but finally it came through.
Mashilo.